What's up, kings and queens? It's your boy Dan from Daft Previews, and I'm here to give you the most comprehensive NBA player prop preview you are going to see. I'm going to share my screen. I'll take you through Outlier. We'll go through all the key matchups. We'll talk about what we like, talk about what I don't like, and I do all this to give you all the information that you need to make the best bets possible. Now, this doesn't work every single day. I got absolutely finger banged, absolutely dry, and I'm not feeling well right now. But it happens, right? Made a few mistakes. My picks were terrible, but I'm here to bounce back. So you know what it is. I'm calling for redemption, baby. So let me know in the comment section if you were down for redemption, if you're going to towel with me. If not, it's all good, baby. Let's go. All right, Kings. We're kicking it off with the Miami Heat versus the Detroit Pistons. Cade Cunningham's a game-time decision, and Bam Adebayo's a game-time decision as well. So we do have some limited markets. So Asar Thompson is also out for the Pistons as well. So limited lines available. Let's see what we can find. Starting with Cade Cunningham, his points prop is 22.5. He's hit this in 6 out of his last 10 games. Up against the Miami Heat, somewhat difficult matchup for him. He has, however, covered in his last 2 games against Miami, scoring 30 and 23 points. Looking at his three-pointers made prop, I know a lot of people betting on that recently. His line is, I'd say, at 2.5. You can get pretty good odds for that. Plus money, 140. Good matchup here against Miami. He's hit this in 6 out of his last 10. And he's hit this in his last 2 games against Miami. Now, you know me, and I like plus money. So Cade Cunningham is getting added to the short list here. And I'll research that a little bit further before I make my final picks. Cade, three-pointers made. Oh, that rhymes. Unintentionally. Cade Cunningham, let's look at his assists. Line's at 7.5. He's covered in 6 of his last 10. Matchup's not too bad against Miami. And he's covered this in his last 2 games against Miami Heat too. So 2 consecutive games in a row where he's covered his points, his three-pointers, and his assist prop against the Miami Heat. Looking at his rebound prop, line's at 4.5. Tough matchup here against Miami, covering in 6 of his last 10. He did, however, go under in his last 2 games against Miami. So the under 4.5, you're not going to get the greatest odds, minus 145. So I'm not overly keen on that. But his points, three-pointers, his assists, they're not too bad either. So points plus assists could be another option. Jumping into the Miami Heat, let's have a look at scary Terry Rozier. So his points prop, 17.5. He's covered this in only 3 of his last 10 games. Does have a good matchup here against the Pistons. Terry scored 17 points when they last matched up. Looking at his three-pointers made, lines at 1.5. 5 out of his last 10, and he made 3 three-pointers against Detroit the last time they played, although this matchup is somewhat difficult. Looking at his assist line, that's at 5.5. The matchup's not too bad against Detroit. He covered with 7 assists last time, but he has hit in 4 out of his last 10. And then looking at his rebound prop, that's at 4.5. He's covered in 4 out of his last 10, but 3 out of his last 4. Matchup somewhat difficult, and he's gone under the last time with only 2 rebounds. So for someone like Terry, based off what I'm seeing, I'd honestly right now in my mind, I'm probably leaning to an under in his rebounds plus assists. He has hit this in 4 out of his last 10 games, but in head-to-head matchups, he has gotten close. Actually, am I drunk? It's not rebounds plus assists. What am I thinking about? I think it's points plus rebounds. I think that's what I was meant to say. Points plus rebounds. Let's have a look at that one. So 21.5, 4 out of his last 10. Had 19 against them last time. But yeah, I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure. So a little bit of a lean at the moment. Let's have a look at bio. So here's a game time decision. He's covered this line of 20.5 in 4 out of his last 10. Has a good matchup here against the Pistons, but Bam's gone under in 5 straight. In head-to-head matchups, he's covered this line in 3 out of his last 5 games. His assist prop is at 3.5. It's plus money. Good matchup here against Detroit, but he's only covered in 3 of his last 10 and 1 out of his last 5 against the Pistons. His rebound prop is at 10.5. He's covered in his last 2 games, but went under in 8 consecutive games. He's only covered in 1 of his last 5 against the Detroit Pistons. So this is someone that I'd be looking at as an under for his rebounds plus assists. 13.5. Against Detroit, he's gone well under in his last 3 games. Looking at his last 10, it's 5 of his last 10, actually. So his last 4 games have been pretty decent, but he has struggled against the Pistons in the past. And depending on what his injury is, probably consider that, right? He's got a back bruise. Now, I can't say I've ever had a bruise on my back before, but probably not the most comfortable feeling. But a record on unders hasn't been great lately, so I might skip Bam. Let's have a look at Jimmy Butler. Points prop is 22.5. Great matchup here against the Pistons, but he's only covered in 4 out of his last 10. He has, however, covered in 3 out of his last 4 against Detroit, so that's pretty good. His assist prop, 5.5. He's covered in 6 out of his last 10. and he's also covered that in 3 out of his last 4 against Detroit. His rebound prop, 5.5, covering in 3 out of his 4 against the Pistons, and in 5 out of his last 10. So he's actually played quite well against the Pistons, full stop. Last 10 is a little bit sketchy. So let's have a quick look at his PRA. His matchup's not bad for either prop, to be honest. His PRA of 34.5 is hit on 6 of his last 10 games. He's covered this in all 4 games against the Detroit Pistons in the past. So Jimmy PRAs could be something we look into. And lastly, let's have a look at Duncan Robinson. We'll just check his points prop out and his 3-pointers. Points-wise, he's covered in 5 out of his last 10. The matchup against the Pistons is not the easiest one, but it's not hard either. Did score 18 points when they last matched up. He's covered in 2 out of his last 3. So I don't hate that for Duncan Robinson. His 3-point line's at 3.5, though. He has covered in 5 out of his last 10. He did make 4 3-pointers the last time he versed the Pistons, but he's only covered in 1 of his last 3 games against them. So I'd probably lean to the under for Duncan Robinson in this one, but not with too much confidence. Jumping into the next game, it's the Phoenix Suns versus the Charlotte Hornets. Now, from what I can see, we've only got lines available for the Charlotte Hornets at the moment, as at time of recording. The Suns are in a back-to-back. Just checking to see if there's any news. Aaron Gordon is out. There's no major updates, to be honest, from what I can see at the moment. RotoWire hasn't updated, so I can't get access to that. But lines are only available for Charlotte at the minute. So I wouldn't take any bets on this game until you look into it a bit further. But let's check out Brandon Miller. So Brandon Miller covered this line of 17.5 in 6 out of his last 10. He is playing at home, which is good for him. Scored 20 points against Phoenix last time, and that was on the road. At home, he does perform a lot better than he does on the road. Difficult matchup, though, against the Suns. Pretty good against wing players, but Brandon Miller has got it done in the past. His assist prop is at 2.5. He's covered that in 6 out of his last 10. Last 2 games have been excellent for assists, so you probably want to look into that a bit further. And he had 3 assists the last time he versed the Phoenix Suns. So his recent form has me intrigued. Brandon Miller assists. And looking at his rebound prop here, lines at 4.5. Tough matchup, but covering in 6 of his last 10 games. Only had 1 rebound against the Suns last time. Who else do we have? Let's check out Nick Richards real quick. Points-wise, 9.5. He's got a tough matchup here against Nurkic. 6 of his last 10. He's gone under in 3 straight against Phoenix. Rebound-wise, that line's at 9.5. 5 out of his last 10. And he's struggled against Phoenix in the past. But even in this game, 31 minutes, only had 2 rebounds. So I think Nick Richards' points and rebounds is worth a look, because there you're looking at lines of 19.5. He has covered it quite well, 6 out of his last 10, but got a very difficult matchup here against the Suns. So I'll look into that one a little bit later. Miles Bridges, his points prop, 21.5. He's covered in 4 straight games, 5 out of his last 10. Only scored 11 points against the Phoenix Suns last time. His assist prop, 3.5, 4 out of his last 10 games. Had 6 assists against the Phoenix Suns. His rebound prop did let me down not too long ago, but he's hit this in 6 out of his last 10 and only had 7 rebounds the last time he came up against the Suns. So, yeah, his assist prop, that does look interesting, to be honest. It's clearly trending upwards, but his line would be 2, but 3.5 for plus money. Not the worst play in the world. Doesn't hit that very often, to be honest, at 3.5. Oh, that's a lie, actually. 55% of his last 20 games. But when I say often, it's not like obvious you should take this play based on his hit rate. The fact that you can get it for plus money and that he's done it against Phoenix before, and also that Phoenix are in a back-to-back after losing to Boston, Miles Bridges' assists might be worth looking into. So I've taken that down. Vasily Micic. So I did bet on this guy to go over, 11.5 points. He scored 25 in that game. Little bit of an update here. LaMelo Ball, still unlikely. He's still not going to be playing. So I think he might have been questionable at some point, but now he's not going to. So Micic, let's see what Micic's got. So his props moved to 12.5 from the 11.5 that it was. The matchup's not overly difficult against Phoenix, which is good. I think it's worth looking into, to be honest, because he's going to get minutes. He's not going to get a whole lot of shots. The last game, blessed, he shot a really high percentage, 5 from 6 from deep. I think that's unrealistic to expect that. But if he's going to take 5 3-pointers, probably make 2 of them if we're lucky, that does go a long way to covering this 12.5. The 12.5, I don't like the number as much, to be honest. but I feel it's still worth a look. If it was at 11.5 at these odds, I'd take it every day of the week. But at 12.5, yeah, I'm a little bit hesitant there. Let's have a look at Trey Mann. His points prop is at 10.5. He's got a good matchup here against Phoenix, but he's only covered in 4 out of his last 10 games. Hasn't played the Suns since he's joined this team. Looking at his assist prop is 3.5. He's covered this in 6 out of his last 10 games. Just waiting for this thing to refresh so y'all can see the graphs. And it's not working. So Trey Mann, numbers ain't fucking working. I can see his hit rate though. 6 out of his last 10. Here we go. 6 out of his last 10. Yet to verse this team. The matchup, not too bad when it comes to assists. And his rebound prop, 4.5. He's hit this in 5 out of his last 10. So for me, his rebounds plus assists does interest me. It's only 8.5. He has covered this in 5 out of his last 10. But I think the emergence of Michik has really slowed Trey Mann down, because this guy can rack up the assists. So let me have a look at his rebounds plus assists prop. He's only covered in 2 out of his last 10. That line's at 9.5. It's plus money, so it's definitely moved up from where it was. But yeah, you can see he does get rebounds and quite a lot of assists too. His assist prop is at 6.5. He's covered this in 3 consecutive games now, 6 out of his last 10. The Phoenix Suns don't give up too many assists, but they do give them up to point guards. So that could be worth a play too. I don't mind that. All right, unfortunately, there's no lines available for the Suns, so I'll still research them prior to the games, but nothing I can give to y'all right now. So let's jump into the Orlando Magic versus the Toronto Raptors. Let's check to see who's questionable. All right, so condolences to the RJ Barrett and his family, losing his brother not too long ago, so that was pretty sad. Gary Trent Jr. is a game-time decision in this one. Jakob Poeltl is out as well, so Orlando looked like they would be heavy favorites in this game, so let's check this out. Gary Harris. I think I bet on him last time, actually, that last game. His line is at 7.5. He's got a good matchup here against the Raptors. He's covered in 7 out of his last 10. Scored 10 points the last time he played them. That was back in November. So this looks like a positive play. So the thing about the Orlando Magic is their key players aren't like monsters or even locks to have a good game every single night. They do go deeper into their bench, and a lot of players like Gary Harris do get some opportunities. So with a line at 7.5, which is hit quite well, he's going to play close to 30 minutes. He's going to get his attempts up. He only needs to make 3 buckets because he makes 2 3-pointers a game. That's already 6 points for you. You just need to make him a free throw or something else perhaps. So, yeah, Gary Harris, don't mind his points prop. We wouldn't look into any of the others. Those things ain't too good. Jalen Suggs, very similar to Gary Harris. Has low lines but can easily cover them. So his points prop, 12.5, and he's covered in 6 out of his last 10. Has had some success against the Raptors, covering in 2 consecutive games. So, yeah, Jalen Suggs could be one as well, but the matchup is somewhat difficult with the Toronto Raptors for all point guards. All right, taking a look at Paolo Banchero. His points prop is 22.5. He's got a great matchup here against the Raptors. He's covered in 5 out of his last 10. Head-to-head matchups, he's covered in 2 out of his last 5. So I think the line for Banchero is honestly just about right. I would lean to the over, but god damn, he gets close without getting over. So, yeah, I'd be a little bit hesitant taking that pick. His 3-point prop, now he's not a known 3-point shooter, but you can always get 2 3-pointers made for Banchero at plus money. The matchup's not too bad when it comes to 3-pointers made. He's hit this in 4 out of his last 10. 2 out of his last 5. Did make 2 3-pointers the last time he played the Raptors. Looking at his assist prop, though, 5.5, 3 out of his last 10, but he's gone under in 5 consecutive games against the Toronto Raptors. So that one I'd probably lean to the under. 3 of his last 10. At his last 5 games against the Raps, he's gone under, but I feel like it would be quite close. He's versus the Raptors. I think I might have said thunder there. My bad. He's versus the Raptors just once this season, though, and in that game he had 3 assists. He has seen an uplift over the last month or two, so yeah, I'd lean to the under, but not too confidently. And his rebound prop is 6.5, 3 out of his last 10, 1 out of his last 5 against the Raptors. So at 6.5, look, he hasn't been rebounding or passing the ball quite well against the Raps, so he's somebody for maybe rebounds and assists you could choose to fade. As you can see, he's covered in only 1 of his last 5 against them and 3 out of his last 10. The games where he went over, Utah, Detroit, Washington, all very easy matchups. Now, the Raptors, In terms of the Magic should dominate these guys easily, right? But for Banchero specifically, it may not be as easy, whereas they tend to give up a lot of things to centers and a lot of assists to point guards, whereas fours is probably the part where they defend the best. So, yeah, probably lean to the under for Banchero's rebounds plus assists. Minus 108 odds there. So, yeah, I don't mind that. I'll take put that on my short list and I'll research that a little bit further. Let's jump into Wendell Carter Jr. So this I'd be interested in taking purely because we know Kelly Olynyk is a slouch inside. So Wendell's got a good matchup. He's covered the line in 4 out of his last 10 games, and he scored 26 points the last time he versed the Raptors. This was, however, last season, but still points. It ain't no fluke. I'm playing pretty decent over his last 2 covering this line, so I don't mind this. I'll put that on my short list. That ain't bad. And then looking at his assist prop out of his last 10, good matchup. But for 2 assists, I don't know. Did have 5 assists last time they played him, but yeah, you'd be sweating your balls all game if you take Wendell on that. His rebound prop is 8.5, covered in 5 out of his last 10 games. Had only 6 rebounds the last time he played the Raptors. So I honestly think that's still worth looking into, given the matchup. Kelly Olynyk most likely playing center for the Raps. So I think Wendell's got a good opportunity there. Franz Wagner, his points prop 18.5 in this one. He's got a good matchup against the Raptors, but he's only covered in 3 out of his last 10. Now, he had a good matchup against Brooklyn. He previously dominated Brooklyn, and he still went under in this game. So I can't help but lean that way. It's a great matchup. He's gone over in only 2 of his last 5 against them as well. His assist prop, 3.5. He's covered in 4 out of his last 10. Yes, can you go put that in the bin for me?
Come on, let's go.
Pardon the interruption. Franz Wagner, his assist prop is 3.5. He's covered in 4 out of his last 10. Does have a good matchup, but he's covered in only 2 of his last 5 against the Raptors. His rebound prop is at 5.5. Matchup is good, but he's only covered in 2 out of his last 10. Gone under in all his 5 head-to-head matches against the Toronto Raptors. So, yeah, I'm not feeling optimistic about any of his plays, to be honest. And what that tends to mean, he's got a good matchup for all. I'd probably think about the under, but he has had good scoring games 2 years ago. So, yeah, I think the smartest thing to do is just not to bet on France. Let's have a look at Kelly Olynyk. So what I'm most interested in is probably his assist prop based off what I've seen, but we'll check them all. Points-wise, he's been playing great lately, covering in 3 straight games, 13.5 points. The matchup, somewhat difficult against the Orlando Magic. Looking at his assist prop, 5.5. That's plus money as well. He's covered in 4 out of his last 10. Tough matchup against the Magic. And his rebound prop is 6.5. He's gone under this in 9 out of his last 10. I've actually bet his under maybe 2 or 3 times as of late, and it's been hitting for me every single time. Back then, there was lines of 7.5. We now see it at 6.5, and I honestly would still lean that way. You get pretty good odds if you take the under 6.5. It's plus money. So Kelly Olynyk under on rebounds, definitely something that's on my radar. But another is over on his points. I don't mind the over on his points. No RJ Barrett, no Scotty Barnes, obviously. Gary Trent Jr. might be questionable to play here. Kelly Olynyk's going to get his opportunities to score. Let's check out Emmanuel quickly. His points prop, 23.5 in this game. He's covered in 5 out of his last 10. Matchup, somewhat difficult for the Raptors if he's looking at scoring points. What might look better is his assists. Check this out. Sorry, I said fucking Raptors again. It's the Magic. Assists, he has a difficult matchup as well, but he has been hitting this more consistently, especially since Scotty Barnes has been out. Line at 7.5. He's covered in 5 out of his last 10. Oh, 5 out of his last 7, really. The matchup is difficult, don't get me wrong, but Emmanuel Quickly's been very close to this for quite some time. The games where he went under, Pelicans and Trailblazers. Trailblazers is an easy matchup, so he should have done better in that one. Pelicans, that is a difficult one. They lost by 40 points, and he still got 7 assists. I don't see them losing by that big a margin, so he should get more opportunities. Still should play about 35 minutes. So Emmanuel Quickly to go over his assist prop. I don't hate that, so I'll look into that a little bit further. His rebound prop. He's been getting busy with his rebounds a bit lately. Check that out. 5.5. He's covered in 6 out of his last 10, but once again, difficult matchup here. Recent form isn't great. I'm not willing to take that, but his assist prop I'll definitely look a little bit further into. Gary Trent Jr. So he's a game time decision on this one. And let me just check to see what's happening. He's got a right groin strain. Points wise, line's at 16.5. He smashed this in his last 2 games. Matchup, somewhat difficult against the Magic, but he's covered in 2 out of his last 4. His 3-pointers made prop, you're looking at 2.5, 2 out of his last 4, and he's covered that in 4 consecutive games. In those games, he's taking, in his last 3 games, he's taken 10 plus 3-point attempts. So, yeah, definitely lean to the over on this one, despite the difficult matchup. But the odds aren't great, so I wouldn't take this as a single bet at minus 150. Could be something that you add to your parlays, perhaps, but I'll look into that a little bit more. I'll also look into his injury as well to see how bad that is. But Gary Trent Jr., 3-pointers. And the last one there, let's have a look at Bruce Brown, actually. I don't know what he's been doing lately. So, points-wise, he's covered in his last 2 games. What I'm going to do with Bruce Brown, because he should play 30 minutes in this one, no RJ Barrett. Just going to look at his numbers when he plays more than 30 minutes per game. All right. So, when he plays more than 30 minutes, he's covered this line in 5 out of his last 10. That's not overly impressive. His assist prop, to do the same thing, leave it on 29. He's covered his assist prop in 4 out of his last 10. And then if we look at his rebound prop, where he's played at least 30 minutes, he's covered his rebound prop of 5.5 rebounds in 7 of his last 10 games. So, yeah, that could be an interesting one. And the reason why I say that is who on this Raptors team is really going to get rebounds? Kelly Olynyk struggles to get over 6 as a starting center. There's no RJ Barrett there. They traded away Precious Achiuwa. They don't have any notable rebounders that come to mind. They're going to have to play some of these young guys perhaps. But Bruce Brown should get at least 30 minutes. And when he plays 30 minutes, he rebounds quite well. The matchup against Magic, that's a difficult one. They rebound extremely well, full stop. But Bruce Brown to go over his rebounds, I think that's worth looking into. So I'll dive into that one a little bit later. And then we've got the Los Angeles Clippers versus New Orleans Pelicans. And of course, there's no Clipper lineups available. I'm sure there's a lot of them who are game time decisions. They're on a back-to-back in this one. So just taking a look, James Harden is a game time decision. Russell Westbrook is out. But Kawhi Leonard was a game time decision coming into today's game against Chicago. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's added to that questionable list. So we've only got lines available for the Pelicans at the moment. So checking out Zion first. His points prop, 22.5. Been playing quite well recently, covering in 6 out of his last 10. Has only covered against the Clippers 1 out of his last 4. His assist prop, 5.5. 6 out of his last 10. 10 assists the last time he played the Clippers, but has hit this in 2 out of his last 4. And his rebound prop, 6.5. He's covered in 1 out of his last 4 games against the Clippers and 5 out of his last 10 overall. So yeah, I think Zion, if I was going to bet on anything, it would have to be his points prop here because upwards trajectory is nice. That's what we want to see. Field goal attempts, somewhat consistent. His percentage, very high. Get into the free throw line. Up against the Clippers, you could say it's a somewhat difficult matchup, but I'm not overly concerned. This does worry me a little bit. In that game, the last game, the Pelicans did win. He scored 21 points, but he shot 7 for 16. So he shot a pretty poor percentage. And he has shot a poor percentage the last 2 times he's played against them. So I may not look into that after all. Jonas Valanciunas, points prop, 9.5. He's covered in 5 out of his last 10 games, 5 out of his last 6 against the Clippers. His last game, he went under. So Jonas, his minutes are declining. So you're seeing his production drop as well. A more difficult matchup too. Rebound-wise, line's at 8.5. He's covered in 8 out of his last 10 games. In head-to-head matchups, he's covered in 3 of 6 against the Clippers. Once again, it's a difficult matchup for him with Zubac in the middle. Brandon Ingram, I took his assist prop not too long ago, and I think I got stuck on the hook. Fell half an assist short. But if you're looking at his points, line's at 19.5. He's covered in 5 out of his last 10. Matchup's not too bad. And he's covered a 3 or 5 against the Clippers, but his last 2 games against them, he has struggled. His assist prop, still at 5.5, covering in 6 out of his last 10. I imagine his last few games have been good. Not too good, but 3 out of his last 5 against the Clippers, he's covered his assist prop. And the next one is his rebounds, 5.5. He's covered in 5 out of his last 10. The matchup's not too bad. Had 8 rebounds against them last time, but he did go under in 4 consecutive games. DJ McCollum, his points prop, 15.5. Matchup against against the Clippers is not too bad. 4 out of his last 10. In head-to-head matchups, he's covered in 4 out of his last 5, scoring 25 points the last time they matched up. You want to see his 3-point numbers. Line's at 2.5. He has covered in 7 out of his last 10. He's also covered in 4 out of his last 5 against the Clippers. So that's an interesting one to look into. I like that. There's a lot of green on the page. So I'll look into that one a little bit later. If we want to look at his assist prop, that's at 3.5. Only 3 of his last 10. And 2 of his last 5 against the Clippers. His rebound prop's also 3.5, but he's hit this a lot better. 7 out of his last 10 games. And he's also hit this in 4 out of his last 5 against the Clippers. So the matchup's supposed to be difficult, but CJ's got it done recently, and he's really got it done against the Clippers in the past. So that might be one to look into as well. All right, so jumping into the Denver Nuggets versus San Antonio Spurs. So looks like a lot of players available on this one. Just going to quickly check the injuries, and then we'll get straight into Nikola Jokic. No notable injuries in this one, which is good for us. So starting with Jokic, points props at 24.5. He's covered in 7 out of his last 10. In head-to-head matches, he's been murdering the Spurs. 21, 26, 37, and then 39 points. Wemby is going to be playing this game. The matchup is great, so I'd automatically take the over in his points plus rebounds. I'm just telling you now, that's where my mind goes. Let's check his rebounds because we do like his points. Rebound-wise, lines at 12.5, covered in 6 out of his last 10. Has gone under in his rebounds 4 consecutive games against the Spurs, though. So that's quite interesting. The matchup being great. So, yeah, the point side of things, I definitely love that a lot more. Assist-wise, lines at 8.5. He's covered in 5 out of his last 10. Has covered in 4 consecutive games against the San Antonio Spurs. So, one thing that might be interesting here, actually, I'm not going to fuck around too much. I think his point prop's honestly the way to go for Nikola Jokic. 24.5 minus 133. I'd be looking at 25.5. Take the minus 105 because, I'm all about value, baby. So I don't mind that. I'll look into that a little bit more a bit later. Thank you, Nicola. And we'll look into Aaron Gordon. So his points prop in this game is 14.5. He's covered this in 7 out of his last 10, but he's got under in 3 straight against the San Antonio Spurs. His assist prop, 2.5. 7 of his last 10. 2 out of his last 3 against the Spurs. And his rebound prop, 5.5, 6 out of his last 10, covering in 2 out of 3 against the Spurs. So I don't particularly like any of Aaron Gordon's lines there. Michael Porter Jr., we did bet on him most recently, and he cashed it for us. It's Miami. Line at 17.5. Matchup somewhat difficult, apparently, against the Spurs. 7 of his last 10, 2 out of his last 4 against the Spurs. So a little bit up and down. 3-point numbers probably look very much the same. 2.5's the line. He's covered that in 6 of his last 10 games. In head-to-head matchups, he's covered in 3 out of his last 4. His rebound prop to 6.5, 7 out of his last 10, and 2 out of his last 4 against the Spurs. So I don't mind his rebound prop. I don't like it enough to look into it further, but yeah, I don't mind it. Let's have a look at Jamal Murray. So his points prop here is at 21.5. Good matchup against the Spurs. 6 out of his last 10, and in head-to-head matchups, 1 of his last 3. He did score 24 points against them most recently. His assist prop, 7.5, 5 out of his last 10. Does have a good matchup, but has gone under in 2 straight against the Spurs. Rebound-wise, 4.5, 4 out of his last 10, and he's covered in 2 of his last 3 games against San Antonio. So, yeah, Jamal Murray, when they're heavy favorites, I'm not a big fan of. So let's see what else I can find in this game. Trey Jones, perhaps. And did you guys see the clip of Trey Jones just dribbling up the clock for 24 whole seconds? My God, that was awful. Points prop, my God, 4 out of his last 10. Scored 24 against Houston. Head-to-head matchups, though, he's covered in 3 straight against Denver. His assist prop, what I'm more usually interested in, he's covered in 5 out of his last 10. The matchup's difficult, but he's hit in 3 out of his last 4 against the Nuggets. Where's Devin Vassell? Here he is. Points prop, 18.5, 6 out of his last 10, 2 out of his last 4 against Denver. Looking at his 3-point market, 2.5 plus money. Difficult matchup, 5 out of his last 10, but 3 out of his last 4 against the Denver Nuggets. His assist prop is also 4.5. He's gone under in 4 straight games against the Nuggets, and 7 out of his last 10 games he's gone over. And then his rebound prop's at 3.5. He's covered this in 6 out of his last 10 games, but only 1 of 4 against the Nuggets. Big Victor the Inflictor Wembanyama. 21.5 points is his line. A good matchup here against Nikola Jokic. He's covered in 6 out of his last 10, and he scored 22 points the last time he played the Denver Nuggets. In that game, he played 25 minutes and attempted 17 shots. His last 10, he's playing 30 minutes, still attempting about 17 shots on average. I just had a poor game against Houston Rockets, scoring only 13 points. But I do like Victor in this matchup. I like it. I like it a lot. Looking at his made prop, 1.5, minus 148. He has hit this in 6 consecutive games. In head-to-head matchups, he did hit the 2 against the Denver last time. So, I don't know. Victor Wembanyama, my parlay there. Got him listed down next to Gary Trent Jr., players that are likely to hit but aren't paying good odds. Looking at his assists, 3.5. He's covered in 7 out of his last 10. Only had 2 assists against them last time. And his rebound prop is 10.5. He's covered this in 6 out of his last 10. He had 11 rebounds last time. So the lines are pretty sharp. I wouldn't be man enough to take the 10.5 in this game. But I don't know. Victor Wembanyama, double-double. I wonder what that's paying. Let's check that out. So it's minus 200. So it's not that great. Yet I brought it up. Let's jump into the last game. It's the Atlanta Hawks versus the Denver Nuggets against the Utah Jazz. My God, my head is all over the place today. So we'll start with these Atlanta Hawks. I want to check out the injury list for them, see who's not playing. Now, we've got Sadiq Bey. He's out for the season. Bogdan Bogdanovic has an illness. Jalen Johnson, right ankle sprain. Obviously, Trae Young and Okongwu is still out. And for the Jazz, Jordan Clarkson is out, as well as Chris Dunn. So Lauri Markkanen's still out as well. So you can expect to see Colin Sexton and Keontae George getting a lot of game time in this one. But let's start with DeJounte Murray. His points prop is 26.5. He's covered in 3 out of his last 10. Just scored 40 points against the Portland Trail Blazers. 3 matchups against Utah, though. He's gone under in 3 consecutive games. His assist prop, 8.5. He's covered in 5 out of his last 10 and 1 out of his last 3. And his rebound prop is 5.5. 6 of his last 10 games and 1 out of his last 3 against Utah. So I think matchup-wise, his assists, he's got the best matchup. Utah do allow a lot of assists to point guards. DeJounte Murray, although it seems very inconsistent, a lot of these games where he had low assist numbers, he had very high scoring numbers. So what you might want to fuck around with is his points plus assists, because he has a good matchup for both of them. Has struggled against Utah in the past. Has only hit 3 of his last 10. So his lines are actually elevated for this particular game. And I'm not confident in saying that he's good enough to get there. Check out Clint Capella. So he's covered in 4 of his last 10, but in 3 straight, more importantly. He's covered in 1 of his last 3 against the Utah Jazz. If you want to look at his rebound prop, that's at 10.5. 3 straight games where he's played quite well. He's covered in 4 of his last 10, and he's given it to these guys in the past. 19, 13, and 13 rebounds. He did that playing an average of 25 minutes a night. These days, he's playing 25 minutes a night right now. So, look, the matchup is a difficult one. The Jazz don't allow too many rebounds to centers. A pretty good rebounding team, but they are somewhat depleted. Lauri Markkanen, Taylor Hendricks is a game time decision as well. So, Clint Capella up against his old mate, John Collins. Might be something that I can mess around with. So, I'll take note of that. And we've got Jalen Johnson. So, I think it was a right ankle sprain that he is currently managing at the moment. But let's see how the numbers look. Points-wise, lines at 16.5. He's covered in 5 out of his last 10. Scored 22 points the last time he versed the Jazz, covering in 1 of his last 3. His assist lines at 3.5, covering in 5 of his last 10 games. Did have 6 assists against the Utah Jazz last time. So his assist prop, that actually interests me for some reason. It's got my attention. It's a feeling inside of my body. Look at his rebounding prop. 8.5. Tough matchup here against Utah. He's covered in 6 out of his last 10 games. Had 13 rebounds the last time he played the Utah Jazz. So the other 2 times, I wouldn't worry too much about it. But yeah, Jalen Johnson rebounds as well. So I might even look at his rebounds plus assists. See what the numbers look like for that. Where is it? All right, 12.5 rebounds and assists. He's covered in 4 out of his last 10 in head-to-head matchups. The last time he versed Utah, he destroyed the rebounds and his assist numbers. So yeah, might be able to fuck around with both right there. But let's have a look at these Utah Jazz. Starting with John Collins. Used to play for the Atlanta Hawks. If you did not know, 6 out of his last 10 games, he's covered 17.5 points. Last matchup against Atlanta, he only scored 5 points, though. His rebounding prop, 10.5. He's covered in 4 out of his last 10. 10 rebounds the last time he played the Atlanta Hawks, but ultimately went under. And I don't know, do you want to look at his 3-point prop? 1.5 plus money. 4 out of his last 10, though. Difficult matchup here. So if I had to pick a John Collins bet, it would probably be his points line, to be honest. I know he hasn't hit it well against Atlanta in the past, but yeah, I don't mind it for this one. He's been playing quite well recently. Keontae George, he's been playing quite well too. Points line's at 18.5. He's covered in 5 out of his last 10. Great matchup here against the Atlanta Hawks. In his last game against Atlanta, this would have been about 3 weeks ago. He scored 14 points, played 33 minutes, shot 5 for 15 from the field, 4 for 9 from deep. Didn't make any free throws. So in his last 5, he's been doing quite well. Shooting the ball on average 14.2 times. In this particular game, he went off. That's when he had the stomach flu or something. So if we remove that from the equation, yeah, his volume is quite high. So his points prop, I don't mind, based off his recent form. Recent form and matchup really has got my attention here for Keontae George. Let's have a look at his assist prop. So he's got a good matchup for this. Last 10 games, he's gone over 7 of his last 10. Head-to-head, he'd have 6 assists last time. So, yeah, the odds aren't great for that one. But, again, that could be something you add to your parlays, perhaps. Colin Sexton, points prop here is 21.5. Against the Atlanta Hawks, the matchup's not too bad. He's covered in 4 out of his last 10. Did score 22 points last time against Atlanta, covering in 1 of his last 3. His assist prop, 6.5. 4 out of his last 10. The matchup's not too bad, but has struggled against Atlanta in the past. When they last played, he only had 3 assists. And his rebounds prop is at 3.5, covering in 2 of his last 10. Just had 7 rebounds against Boston, but he has gone under his rebound prop against Atlanta. So Colin Sexton, we might be thinking of a rebound plus assist under. Perhaps. Just saying, perhaps. 5 out of his last 10, but in all games against the Atlanta Hawks. Yeah, I'm a little bit split on that one, so I'm not man enough to take that. Taylor Hendricks, let's just quickly check this guy out. Line's at 8.5. He's covered in 4 out of his last 10. The matchup is a good one. Had 8 rebounds last time they played. Sorry, 8 points. Looking at his rebounds, 7.5's the line, 4 out of his last 10. Good matchup, and he had 8 rebounds last time. So, yeah, look, wildly inconsistent. His minutes are inconsistent too, so I just wouldn't feel confident betting on him unless I knew what the rotations were. That's a wrap on today's video, but before we wrap this whole thing up, I'm going to tell you, I'm not really feeling this slate too much. Like, I did get some vibes, and I did take a short list of quite a few players, but yeah, I'm not overly aroused by what I'm seeing, so I'm just letting you know now. So what that means, I'll probably have less picks unless, you know, more player markets do become available, and I'll update the thread in the comment if you guys do choose to tell. But look, honestly, my best advice for you is to sign up to Outlier, use my free trial. Don't even use my free trial if you don't want to. Just sign up to Outlier or something like it and learn to do your own research. Like, I've done this every day this whole season. I've recorded almost every single day, but the exercise of doing this every single day, like, you just see things that other people are going to miss. There is, you know, I join a lot of different communities for sports betting, and I see the bets that are given out, and they're just doing something similar to this. I've seen a lot of paid services who do exactly what I'm doing. They'll share you the picks based on the same analysis I'm able to give you. So I am planning on doing a video this weekend, more of a behind the scenes or end-to-end of how I get to my final picks. What I show you on Outlier is just one piece of the puzzle. There are other websites and resources and factors that I use. So I'll be looking to create a video on that. I'm just hoping that I do get enough time for it. But yeah, it's definitely on the cards. I've also got planned a video about parlays where I'm going to share the truth about parlays. So that seems like a fun one. But look, if you did make it this far, I appreciate you. If you haven't already, like the video, sub to the channel if you haven't, because your boy's getting busy. We're growing up. The 5,000 goal is within reach. I think we need another 500 subscribers or something like that at the moment. So we're growing quite well at a very consistent basis. But I'll stop chewing your ear off. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Up to the channel because your boy's getting busy. Coming to you live from the west side of Sydney. We've got the free picks and the juice on the daily. It's all free. You don't even have to pay me.